Perhaps we should leave it to Lord Butler to finish the anecdote.
That, like so many things in the series, is accurate. There is a locked door, and the Cabinet Secretary has a key. And that was a hilarious episode, because Sir Humphrey, finding the lock was changed, had to climb out of the window, try to get in through the windows of the Cabinet Room, set off the alarm, and all hell broke loose.
I must protest in the strongest possible terms my profound opposition to a newly instituted practice which imposes severe and intolerable restrictions upon the ingress and egress of senior members of the hierarchy, and which will, in all probability, should the current deplorable innovation be perpetuated, precipitate a constriction of the channels of communication and culminate in a condition of organizational atrophy and administrative paralysis which will render effectively impossible the coherent and coordinated discharge of the function of government within Her Majesty's United Kingdom of Great Britain and Northern Ireland.
You mean you've lost your key?
And it had a particular relevance to me, because in the very first week I was appointed Cabinet Secretary, I went to go through that door and found a man changing the lock. So I said, well, this is very discouraging if they got fed up with me as quickly as this. And he'd obviously seen the episode, because he said, oh no, Sir Robin, somebody's lost their key and we've got to change the lock, but here's a key for you, Sir Robin.
The credibility, the characters, and the comedy of Yes Minister led, in January 1984, to one of the most bizarre events of Margaret Thatcher's premiership. The programme won an award from the National Viewers and Listeners Association, and the Prime Minister was asked to present the award. Lord Butler helped her write her speech.
Bernard Ingham and I had the idea that it would make the speech more fun than usual if we wrote an episode which Margaret Thatcher could perform with Paul Eddington and Nigel Hawthorne. So we wrote a speech, and it was about her antipathy to economists. Now, when we wrote this piece, we had to persuade both Margaret Thatcher and the BBC that it should be used. What nobody knew was the difficulties we had in persuading Margaret Thatcher to do it. She could see that in some ways it was a coup, and yet she was extremely nervous about doing it. If Bernard Ingham and I rehearsed it with her once, we rehearsed it with her 50 times, and we rehearsed it yet again in the car going up to the BBC when she was going to give this speech, and she was still saying she wasn't sure whether she was going to do it. But when in the speech she said, I've noticed that never in the series has the Prime Minister appeared in it, and I thought I'd like to put that right today, so I have a little sketch. A frisson went round the room. Wonderful. People who were just used to sitting listening to another politician's speech were suddenly on the edge of their desk.
I want you to abolish economists.
Abolish economists, Prime Minister?
Yes, abolish economists, and quickly.
All of them, Prime Minister.
Yes, all of them.
And it finished up, as is well known, with Margaret Thatcher saying to Sir Humphrey, what degree did you get, Sir Humphrey? And Sir Humphrey looks modest and said, a double first, Prime Minister.
A double first.
Congratulations, Sir Humphrey.
Thank you very much.
But what in?
Politics and, economics.
Capital, my dear Sir Humphrey. Capital. You'll know exactly where to start.
Yes, Prime Minister.
It was wonderful to see these three professionals in their different spheres working together. They performed it absolutely marvellously.
So 25 years on, what legacy has Yes Minister given us? Well, for civil servants, comparison to the man who is probably by now Lord Appleby is a chilling experience, as Michael Bishard explains.
There were certainly occasions when secretaries of state or ministers, wanting to make me feel uncomfortable, would have suggested I was behaving like Sir Humphrey, which of course I regarded as the worst possible insult that anyone could pay me. That always made me stop and think whether I was sufficiently focused on the end result or was becoming a bit obsessed with process myself.
The phrase Sir Humphrey was used no less than 34 times last year in parliamentary debate. including this reference from the Leader of the House of Commons, Peter Hayne.
As he knows, the government has been introducing more and more bills subject to the pre-legislative scrutiny procedure so that there is proper consultation, so that we get things right, and Sir Humphrey doesn't always get things right, of course.
So why has Sir Humphrey become so useful as a form of political shorthand? Ken Clark.
Sir Humphrey has become a figure of speech which has entered the language as an example of the occasions when a bureaucracy is slightly disconnected from the minister and is exercising his own power.
Oh yes, Minister, Sir Humphrey will say. The 40,000 jobs went. Why are there still so many people in the building, Sir Humphrey? 38,000 of them have been moved to new tasks, new government initiatives, which have been responsible. They are no longer administrators, they are now deliverers.
It's become a convenient shorthand for describing what happens, to talk about the machinations of Sir Humphrey, whom we're all very fond of, really.
It's an incredible tribute to the authors of that series, who constructed a character that was both popular and understandable by the ordinary viewing public, the majority of whom have never taken a course in British government and politics. It was understandable to them at their level, but actually was of the highest standard of perception and writing, and was also very close to the real thing.
Lord Donoghu. So do the civil service regret it? Lord Armstrong was Britain's most senior civil servant 25 years ago.
I regret it slightly because, as I say, I don't think the stock type portrayed is a reality. And using the name Sir Humphrey is a reminder of something which doesn't really actually happen. From that point of view, I regret it, but it's almost inevitable, isn't it? In the lecture that Sir Edward Bridges gave in 1950, he said that the civil service was like Wigan Pier or mothers-in-law, a stock joke, and Sir Humphrey's rather like that.
What was that analogy again, Lord Armstrong?
As Lord Bridges once said, making jokes about civil servants is like making jokes about mothers-in-law or Wigan Pier. It's a healthy thing.
Sorry, wrong Cabinet Secretary there. That was Lord Butler. So did Sir Humphrey give an unfair impression of the civil service? Unusually for a permanent secretary, Michael Bishard entered the senior ranks of the civil service from outside. And more importantly, after Yes Minister had appeared on television. So did he think Whitehall would be littered with Sir Humphreys?
I suppose when I joined the civil service, I did think there would probably be some characters like Sir Humphrey around Whitehall. And I don't think I was disappointed, really. I mean, I think I found a lot of people who are hugely talented and very clever. And I think Sir Humphrey is very talented and very clever. I found people who had worked together for many, many years, and therefore their network, what is sometimes known as the old boy network, was very highly developed, and clearly Sir Humphrey many, many times demonstrated that. And I think I was concerned that I would find people who were a bit resistant to change and a bit conservative with a small c, because that comes out very strongly in the programme, and I think I did find that too.
1997 saw the first change of government since Sir Humphrey hit our airwaves. For 18 years, Whitehall had been exposed politically to the Conservative government, of which I was a member. So how did the incoming new Labour government view the civil service? Lord Donoghu, who had advised Wilson and Callaghan in Downing Street until 1979, himself became a government minister.
My impression was that quite a lot of the ministers, few of whom had ever served in government before, had any experience of government, a lot of them, their views of government and their job as a minister and working in Whitehall were shaped by Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister. That, I think, is one reason why the Labour people came in rather suspicious of the civil service and feeling they must have more special advisers, because otherwise the civil service would con them. And they maybe had an excessive reaction in that direction. But I'm no doubt that Yes Minister and Yes Prime Minister were, as programmes, the primary education of most ministers.
Lord Butler was Cabinet Secretary when Tony Blair entered Downing Street. How does he think Yes Minister changed perceptions of the civil service?
I think that it may have caused people to take it a bit more seriously than they should have done, and to have drawn the conclusion that civil servants are constantly manoeuvring against ministers. And that is, in my experience, untrue. If the public go around with their only impression of the civil service being Sir Humphrey, yes, perhaps that does do the civil service less than justice.
The former Home Secretary, David Blunkett, agrees. He thinks that some of the historic material Yes Minister was based on, such as Barbara Castle and Richard Crossman's diaries, had a skewed view of reality.
They did tend to feel that what was in fact bureaucratic inertia and in some cases a lack of gearing up to project management and modern leadership, they put it down to political blockage, to some sort of political or philosophical objection. I don't think that is true for a minute. I think that the civil service that I've met have been keen to learn about, to understand what you wanted them to do.
That's not a view shared throughout Westminster. According to Michael Bishard, one of David Blunkett's own permanent secretaries, Yes Minister did have an adverse effect, but not in the way you might expect.
The programme was very fair about the civil servants. Actually, if you think about it, the characters in Yes Minister are all rather lovable, and the fun is fairly gentle. So in that sense, I think the civil service was quite fortunate that it had a programme which was just gently poking fun at it. And I think in a way that may, in the longer term, have had a malign influence, because I think it made people less concerned about reforming the civil service. And I think because of Yes Minister, there are a lot more people out there who think, well, it's really, quite a nice, comfortable civil service that we have, and it doesn't do a lot of damage, and they're really rather nice people, and by and large we should leave it alone.
However, Ken Clarke thinks this whole debate may have got a bit out of hand.
Yes Minister amused people, entertained people, gave people an insight into the workings of an organisation perhaps they'd never seen before. But you've got to be a complete idiot if you watch Yes Minister and you think this is literally what goes on between John Major and his officials, or Tony Blair and his officials. No, it's not. It is a grotesque exaggeration. It is a parody. It is a tease. It's actually very British in its humour, because it is subtle and intelligent and so on. You've got to be a real pompous stuffed shirt if you think it's done any lasting damage.
So, what is my overall view of Yes Minister and its portrayal of the civil service? I think that when given clear direction by ministers, the British civil service is unrivalled in its professionalism and dedication. However, where Yes Minister becomes true to life is when you have a lazy minister, or a minister who doesn't have a purpose, a minister like Jim Hacker. The machinery of the civil service is all too good at carrying on without you and going in a direction of its own. One of my favourite scenes from the series is where the private secretary, Bernard, explains to the minister that he can simply move his workload from his in-tray to his out-tray without worry.
You just transfer all the letters from your in-tray to your out-tray, put a brief note in the margin if you wish to see a reply, and if you don't, you need never see or hear of it again.
Do you mean to seriously tell me that if I transfer everything from here to here without even reading it, that's all I have to do?
Yes.
It'll be dealt with?
Precisely.
Properly?
Immaculately.
Well, what's a minister here for, then?
A minister is there to drive the machinery of government, or be carried along by it. And either way, the civil service will say, Yes, Minister. Isn't that right?
Yes, Minister.
Thank you, Sir Humphrey.